go. All right, Katie, I wanted to ask you some questions. Your general thoughts for the meat industry, agriculture, how it's come about. And my first question that I wanted to ask you is how do you see like your initial thoughts towards the meat industry coming around with all the lab produce, how these foods have slowly take over, like they've taken over a bit in a way. Like, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Oh, I could talk about this all day, but I think to put it short and sweet, I think in my general opinion that lab produced foods are actually, if you think about it as a wholesome, pretty good for the beef and meat industry because it honestly proves how good our meat is compared to lab grown meats. I mean, you look at them and you look on what it takes and I don't know about like anybody else, but personally, I really don't want my food grown in a sterilized lab. Like, I think when I think of sterilization and like places that are sterile, I think of hospital surgery rooms and stuff like that. And I just don't think that those are places that meat should be produced. But in the long run, they're showing like how small amounts, like 3 ounces of beef, can bring you all 12 like essential amino acids in those just 3 ounces, and how good our protein is nowadays, that it just disproves the fact that we don't need this lab grown meat to survive. Like we have everything we need right in front of us with um good old dirt grown, not just beef, but beef, chicken, pork, all of them. Like it just proves how well our meat industry is without the lab grown meat. Like it's not needed to survive. We can keep up with the supply and like we can keep the supply up to the demand that needs to be
Mhm.
met by producing grass fed, grain finished, whatever you want, whatever your preferred type of beef is, we can produce that and we can meet the demand.
All right. And I also wanted to touch up on that because nowadays there's people who will see this information or like right now they hear you, they hear other people talk about this and they'll go through one ear and exit the other because they'll tend to ignore them due to the following of a brand or just an idea that somebody may have created just to get you to get with their idea so that you could start advocating for this, like though it could be a wrong error. So like what would you do to spread information or just talk to people in a way where they should understand some of the things that are going on?
Yeah, I think this is very important for the beef industry, for the meat industry, for agriculture as a whole. I think personally, I'm a big visual learner. So if I'm gonna take, we use this graphic a lot in our Collegiate beef advocacy program, is we take a 3 ounce cut of beef and we put it side by side to what a lab grown meat or chicken or another source of protein, tofu, whatever your preference is, and we compare it to what our product brings and then what other products bring. So when you have those two side by side, it's basically no comparison. Like the fact that you can get so much out of just pure protein, pure grown raised protein compared to the lab based protein. And then also the fact of like, yeah, something might be shelf stable, but is that better for you? Would you want something on the shelf for 365 days that's going to bring you that? Or do you want fresh, either never frozen, because people prefer never frozen meat, or the fact that you can freeze the meat and then use it and it still looks as good as it did the day it processed. So I love using those visual graphics, or just doing videos where people can see, if they can't physically go out and be boots on the ground at farms and ranches, then just doing videos where they can kind of see through that third party that what we do is not cruel. What we do is um, beneficial in every way to the animal, and being a more understanding if people are worried about the ethical things like branding or castrating, maybe just explaining why that happens in order to produce the meat that they are eating, like how it's beneficial and it's not torture or it's not harm to that animal. So I think that's a big thing. If people see it, they'll understand it. If you have to flat out read 150 facts on a piece of paper, they're not going to see and they're not going to understand. So I think being that visual learner is very important nowadays.
And just to finish it off with, I have one final question because I mean, agriculture it hits its ways with the meat industry in a way. So I want to see like what do you think right now since industrialization has become a big thing nowadays in the United States in general and everywhere, slowly bringing down places due to putting a new building up, putting the brand new coffee place. Like, how do you see this is affecting agriculture?
I think industrialization is very beneficial. We talk about meat processing plants and how they're doing robot graders for meat. I think that's incredible because you look at the supply of graders we have to put in the amount of packing plants that are needed, and we don't have the supply to meet that demand. Like that demand is blown away. And the fact that we have the technology nowadays to be able to put that prime label on a piece of meat that is truly prime, and we're able to just not just falsify a label, like it's true facts, it's cross-referenced against all the data, it's got all the inputs needed to grade that meat. I think that is just gonna do wonders for especially the American meats, because that way we can get it out, we can get it harvested, we can get it processed, we can get it graded, and we can get it into grocery stores, we can get it into freezers, and that makes it so much faster. We don't have to wait on a grader to come into that specific butcher shop or that specific slaughterhouse and do those time restraints. Like those cattle or those turkeys or those pigs might be ready to go to the harvest floor today, and that grader might not be able to be ready or be able to travel down for work for 3 more weeks. So we don't want to hold those. We're able to get those meats out the door without adding more grain to those cattle that are already at market weight, or those pigs that are at 280 pounds. Like they're ready to go out the door. We don't need to hold them to 320 to wait on a grader. So, but not only that, just the fact of if you look at the supply chain of a whole as a whole, we are doing great things. Like just just looking at like the buildings, the processing buildings, and I just did a event with Dr. Temple Grandin, who is a inventor of those systems that animals walk through, and just the progression of that. Like the fact that we went from just putting a cow in a cage and then just taking it to the slaughter floor, and now there's a whole system so they don't get in stress and they're not causing rigor mortis in our meats and stuff like that is phenomenal. It's just, and it's going to continue to grow. And I think that's great, but it's also humbling knowing that people are still out teaching the ways of before technology. I'm on a farm currently where I don't have the money to spend on phenomenal hydraulic chutes, but I have a manual one that I'm able to use just as well. Am I thankful when I get to go watch those demonstrations with those fancy hydraulic chutes and how it makes things easy? Yes. And I dream of the day I get to own one. But until then, I will be perfectly set with my manual chute. Or we talk about cutting trees down by hand. Now there's a skid steer attachment where you can just attach it and it just falls right over and there's nothing left. And we take for granted sometimes that there is all this technology, but it's super nice to slow down and have those, I call them olden days on the ranch, where we can just go hands in and just be grateful for the skills and the knowledge that we've endured over the years, but also very, very thankful for when I go out and I plant crops and I don't have to worry about driving in a straight line, that we have that auto steer that guides us and all the guidance and population and all the numbers. It's phenomenal what the world's come to, and I look forward to watching it grow.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Like you said, I've heard many differences within the industrialization, whether like the goods and the bads, but some people specify it with the food places and all that. But the way you mentioned, like the meat, anything with the industry right now, it's really helping a lot because comparing meat from nowadays where it's more safer than compared to back then, it really it shows a good point how it has goods and there's bads to it at the same time. And I
Yes,
appreciate the this talk, Katie. I thank you for your time.
of course.
And
If you need anything, you just feel free to reach out.
yes, ma'am. I'll be looking forward to another one. All right.